this is a new resource that we've put together for mostly for K-12 educators, also can be used at the college level, and for anybody interested in history. But it allows you to access many primary sources through the browse section. Also, ready-made learning activities you can bring right into the classroom. And then you can also build and share your own learning activities using documents that we have on the website. And also you can upload documents that you want to use in your lessons directly to the lesson. So you're able to do that as well. And then you can share with other educators. So educators throughout the state, anybody who accesses the website can view your learning activities if you make them public. And then they can copy them and use them in their classroom as well. All right, so to get started, in order to use the learning activities with your students, to copy them, to have activities of your own, you have to register. If you don't register, you can just browse. You can select an image. You can right-click on it, copy the image. You can also save the image to your computer, so you can use it in a Word document. You can use it up on your smartboard. So you do have access to the documents that way. But if you want to use any of the functionality of the website, you have to register for an account. It's free. The only thing that we save is your name, your email, the IP that you're accessing it through. That's all we keep. So we are 2D compliant. We are willing to sign agreements with districts for the 2D compliance if your district requires it for your teachers to be able to use the website. We've had a couple that have said the teachers can't use it unless we sign their agreement. We put it through our legal team, it's all set, so we can sign those because again, we collect no student information and just the teacher name and email when you register is all that we keep. And if you are inactive for a year, we delete it. So we don't even keep it past a year if you're not using the website. So you would register here, again, email address, put a password in, your name, that's it. I'm gonna log in actually with my personal login because that way you don't see the back end stuff. All right, so when you log in, it initially takes it to your activities page. So I have a couple that I've created. If I've published them, it shows like that. If they're not published or public yet, it has a line through it. I'll show you more about that as we go along. Also from this page, you can access your bookmarks. So as you're going through, if you bookmark an activity or primary source, it will show up on this page. So you have them all in one place. You can also add classes. So if you teach a couple different sections of social studies or English or whatever class you're using these resources for, you can put that in. So when your students complete an activity, they're going to put their name and they're going to be able to select one of your class groups if you have them available like this. So you just add them right here. Again, your student is going to put the name, but we don't keep that information because they're going to create a PDF and then either upload it to Google Classroom or Schoology or email it to you, whatever platform you use to interact online with your students for assignments, they'll be able to send a PDF to that. Initially, we had them submitting it through the website, but because of the Ed2D law, we have opted for the PDF version so we don't have to deal with the personal information issue. So again, they can select the class, so that makes it easier for you to sort as you're getting their answers. And then here's your account information. You can change your password here and then you have your personal information here. We also put a link here for how to create an activity. Since this is kind of the activities page, if you click here, it gives you some step-by-step instructions on how to create the different learning activities. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of that as an introduction, but here's where you can find a quick reference for that information. All right, so what we're going to start with, the other thing I want to mention is make sure you can access the website from your school computer. With the filters that schools have now, sometimes things are blocked for various reasons. They think it's a gambling site or, even though it's not. So just if it is blocked, just check with your IT and they can open it up, make it an allowable resource. So just be aware of that before you start using it in your classroom. Make sure it's accessible. All right. And then one last thing, introduction resources page. Right here is quick links to the getting started, using primary sources, point out the using primary sources page has some great tools on learning how to use primary sources with your students. And also it has our original resources that the archives has created for educators over the past 25 years. We've put them into the original format so that if you're used to accessing them that way, we have them in those collections here on this page. Just an additional resource for you. Also, Student Research Awards, if you're familiar with that. If not, you can explore at a later point. That's a competition we offer, grades 4 through 12, similar to History Day, but at just the New York State level. It's a great program if you're interested in project-based learning for your students with primary sources. We have a magazine. I create an educator guide every quarter to go with the magazine. You get access to the article for free that goes with the educator guide. You might want to check that out. And then our professional learning page. I'm recording all of these webinars, so they will be cleaned up a little bit and then made available, hopefully by the end of the week, on our professional learning page. So you can share them with other educators as well. All right. Now, using the website. So if you're on the home page here, if you want to browse historical records, you would go here. And I'm going to show you documents related to the 4-5 curriculum. So that's why I set up the 4 different webinars. So I'll give you a brief introduction, but I want to show you some of the resources we have available specific to that grade level, so you kind of know where to go to start using some of these resources with your students, hopefully this fall. So I'm going to clear my cache here. So if you go to American Revolution, we have many documents related to that American Revolution. I just want to quick show you, we have, let's see if you put in, we have a collection of documents that were found in Andre's boot. So if you know Benedict Arnold, known as a traitor during the American Revolution, John Andre was the person he was working with on the British side, and he was captured near Tarrytown, and he had on him in his boot folded documents given to him by Benedict Arnold. And as you can see, they have the creases in them from how they were folded to put into his boot. We have several documents from that collection. And we do have transcripts available. So if you see this button here, we've created it. We've created transcript online because, of course, most students don't read cursive, especially at the 4th, 5th grade level, but even at the high school level. So we do have a transcript here available. If there were multiple pages, you'd see them across here, and you would be able to see the transcript for each of the pages. So we do make that available to make it a little bit more accessible for students. And so those are one of the collections that we have available that are interesting for the American Revolution. If you wanted to create an activity with this document, if you scroll down, you'll see that we have an activity created already. This is what the student view looks like. So if you share the link with your students and assign it, this is what they would see. And these are the questions that we've created. If you want to use it with your students, though, you would need to copy it to your account. You have to create a new name. So you could just say, you could just call it artillery orders. It can be similar, it just can't be identical to what's here. It saves all of the original information we put in when we created the lesson, or whoever created the lesson. You can change any of that information here, save it. You can add additional primary sources. So if you wanted to add a few more for your students to look at in this activity, you could add them here. You can also upload your own to go with this document. You can change the instructions. You can write a conclusion. If you want your students thinking about something before class the next day, you can write it here in this box. And then instructions for other teachers. So if you're going to share it with other teachers, or even just notes for yourself on how to do the lesson, you can put that in this box here and save it. And then here's the questions. So with the questions, you can change them, delete them, move them around, reorder them, just drag and drop, anything you want to do here. So totally open to whatever the teacher wants to make the lesson at their student level accessible for their students. And here's where you would publish it. If you want to use it with your students, you have to publish it. If you want to share it with other teachers, you make it public. And so when they browse the learning activities, if you made your lesson public, it will show up here when they're browsing the different topics, depending on what you choose on that initial page. here. We'll sort by all of these. So that's briefly how you would take a lesson that we've already created and copy it. So again, you browse the activities here, or the historical records here. And if it has a learning activity, it'll show up at the bottom of the page. Now, to access learning activities in particular, again, it looks very similar, but what's added here is a grade level browse. So you can browse by lower elementary, upper elementary, so we're going to do upper elementary. And you can browse by topics as well. We're going to select Erie Canal. And so we've got, these are the learning activities we have for grade 4-5 related to the Erie Canal. I'm going to show you this one here. This is one we created a few years back in the same, when they had the grade 5 social studies test, which was teaching students the beginnings of the format of a DBQ and how to look at multiple sources, evaluate them, analyze them, and then write an essay. So this lesson was written according to those that format that the state had put out. So you can alter this in any way. These are the teaching instructions. If you look at the student view, so this one is about the celebration of the opening of the canal. Some key concepts: was a major accomplishment, created water transportation. So the students can analyze these documents and look at how it was celebrated, why it was celebrated, and then they can write an essay. Or you could just have them answer the questions. Again, you can alter this in any way you want once you copy it and make it your own lesson. But they can click on the document, look at it a little bit bigger. And then there's questions that go with each. The nice thing about this activity type, which is the chronological reasoning, is you can also add a narrative, so you can describe what they're seeing. You can put text, any sort of text in there to help them with the analysis. So scaffolding is very easy to do with this because there's lots of places to add things for your students. Again, you wanted to use it, you would just copy it there. So that's an example of a multi-document learning activity for the grade 4-5 level. And if you copied that, then you'd also get all everything you see here you would see, but you could eliminate, change any way that you would like to. One other 4-5 resource I want to show you that we've created is for, we've labeled it Indigenous Peoples of North America. We've gone back and forth. We've consulted some of the New York State tribal leaders, interacted a little bit, asked them. Indigenous is generally accepted. Some still find that offensive, but we've gone back and forth. But we've settled on Indigenous, but also Native American. Some prefer, but where possible, we try to use the group's name, so the individual group, nation. So, but here we have one on the loss of indigenous lands. And while this is obviously a text-heavy document, we do have some great maps that show the loss of indigenous lands over time, and which is a great activity for students to look at where indigenous populations started in New York State, and then how the loss of land over time occurred. So if you look at the student view on this one, we have this map, which this is pretty much, it has each of the tribal names here for the Iroquois, and then as you go through, this is 1890, and then it's got the reservations. So it's a very good visual learning activity for students to learn about the loss of indigenous lands over time in New York State. Again, you would copy this to use in yours and then change it in any way that you would like. If you wanted to start from scratch building a learning activity, you can do it here. If you click on here, you would create the activity. If you had one in mind, you would name it. And then when you get to the next page, which would be the primary sources, you would click use or add primary source. The other way to do it is to browse for a document first. And then if you, let's see here. pick a document here. There's a telephone operator in New York. Students would have no idea what that is. So it'd be an interesting analysis, but you would hit the create an activity there and the type that you would want. And then again, you name it, and then it would show up on the next page as your primary source. Let's see here. So yeah, so that's I think in a nutshell the major functions of the website. Oh, the other thing I want to show you, one last thing, is the different types of activities. And so here's one on child labor, and this is the evaluating the evidence activity type. And so we did start out, DocsTeach has one that's similar. If you look at the student view, you'll be able to see how this works. So there's multiple documents that we selected, and then there's questions to help them analyze the document. And if you click on the document, it blows it up so that you can see the full document. This one has many pages, but you can opt to only use one of the pages. You can excerpt it however you'd like. But it asks them to sort them by, does it support child labor, or is it a document that is against child labor? So like if this one supports it, they put it on this side. And if this one's against it, they put it on this side. And so, you know, whichever side is more weighted when they're done, then this asks them to write a paragraph, either whether, you know, supporting child labor or against it using evidence from the documents. So it's a great evaluating the evidence tool. Great way to get students to start to see that, you know, you bring the evidence together and then you start to draw conclusions from it. The other one is a map activity. So the geographic reasoning. And we have several map templates like this. New York State, United States, global, that you can use. You select which one you want, and then you select the documents to go with it. And you look at the student view, and what they're doing here is they would be dragging the document onto the part of the map that it belongs. And then with this one, we included a map of the canal where you can see all of the different towns. So when you look at this one, it tells you it's from Lyons. And so you can look at the map, see where Lyons is, and then you drag it onto that part of the map. Now, again, when they're done with this, they go to the bottom, they type their name. If there's a class, they select their class, and then they save it as a PDF, and you will get whatever this looks like when they're done to evaluate their lesson, their learning activity. So I think some really great ways to bring primary sources into the classroom easily for students to start to learn how to analyze and work with historical records. So I think at this point, I'll open it up to see if there are questions. And I know there was one in the group about local history. So if you, or in the chat section, so if you go to either the historical records or the accessing learning activities, there's a browse by region. So if you're from, let's see here, so if you're from North Country, well, I've got these selected. So you want to select out, if you just do the region without the topic, this is what you get for North Country. And then if you wanted to narrow it by topic, I think I have one, transportation. So here's one from Plattsburgh. It's a picture with, there's trolley tracks, bicyclists, walkers, horse and buggy. You can see some other sorts of tracks here on the road. So analysis for different types of transportation. You can use this in a bunch of different ways. But so here's one for North Country. If you're looking to teach something about transportation or community, you could use this. It's more of a local resource if you're from that area. As far as local history, I mean, yes, there's many in here that are for different parts of the state. To teach different parts of local history. We are working on working with local repositories throughout the state, places that have local history resources that would be great for educators, but they don't have a way of really making them available. We are able to add their documents to this resource. So if they have ones that they want to use or they want to make available, we are starting to reach out to repositories across the state to invite them to submit documents to be added for teachers to add more of local historical records to the database. Also, if you are a teacher in an area and you create a learning activity and you have documents from a local repository, you can upload those to your learning activity to provide more local historical records as well.